Joc Pederson and Matthew Boyd joined the San Francisco Giants on one-year deals, but on the same day, Freddie Freeman joins the Dodgers and Chris Bryant goes to the Rockies. So we'll break all of that down next.
You are Locked On Giants, your daily San Francisco Giants podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hello and welcome to Locked On Giants, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. My name is Ben Kaspick, and on this show we provide daily episodes Monday through Friday, talking about the San Francisco Giants in a way that's data-driven and rational, but also simple, passionate, and accessible to all. I'm a former contributor for the baseball statistics and analysis websites Beyond the Box Score and Rotographs. I've been podcasting about the Giants since 2015, and I'm a lifelong fan. Thanks for making Locked On Giants your first listen every day. We're free and available on all platforms, including YouTube, so check us out there if you have not already. And coming up on today's show, yesterday, another busy day in the MLB offseason. Giants made a couple of solid additions, but it's overshadowed by the Dodgers getting yet another superstar and likely future Hall of Famer in Freddie Freeman. They can't keep getting away with this. That's what it feels like to me, because it was just a couple of off seasons ago. They go out and trade for Mookie Betts and then extend him. That's ridiculous. And then at the trade deadline, they get Trey Turner, they get Max Scherzer, now they get Freddie Freeman. It's just crazy what the Dodgers have been able to accomplish here in the last couple of years in terms of acquiring talent. And I think that Giants fans are a little bitter about this, and I understand that. Completely. Freddie Freeman grew up in the LA area, Dodgers fan, presumably. I think he wanted to go there. He ends up getting a 6-year deal, even though he's already 32. So there is a chance that towards the end of this deal, it's kind of one that doesn't look so great, but it's a 6-year, $162 million deal, $27 million per year. And he also got the qualifying offer, so the Dodgers will surrender their second and fifth highest draft picks in addition to paying cold hard cash for Freddie Freeman. But it's undoubtedly a blow to the Giants' chances of winning the division. Dodgers were a great team already, and they just got that much better with the addition of Freeman. So on the flip side, these additions of Joc Pederson and Matthew Boyd don't look so impressive, do they? But they're useful players, and that's kind of the way that the Giants have done this. For better or worse, they've spread their money around this offseason. They've kind of committed quite a bit of money, but not very much in the way of long-term commitments. In fact, they're one of just a few teams that have no money on the books. I think just a couple of years from now, not 2023, but in 2024, no committed money, I believe. And yeah, I mean, Joc Pederson and Matthew Boyd are just going to be useful role players for the Giants. I mean, Boyd is a starting pitcher who's got some upside. He's currently injured. He's had some real flashes of promise spending his career in Detroit. His last full season in 2019, well, I guess 2021, he was out there as well. And he pitched pretty well. He pitched to a 3.89 ERA. He's just kind of, he's done some things well some seasons and some things poorly in those same seasons, and then like flipped it around in the other years. Like, for example, he had a really good strikeout rate in 2019, but allowed too many homers. And then in 2021, he got the homers under control, but the strikeout rate tanked. So it's kind of an upside play, low risk. It's a $5.2 million guarantee with about another $2.5 million, I believe, available in incentives. And yeah, so in addition to Boyd, the Giants pick up Joc Pederson. And we're all very familiar with Joc Pederson from his time with the Dodgers, of course. He is a left-handed corner outfielder / designated hitter who punishes right-handed pitching. And the way he mostly does it is hitting for power. So, he's going to slot into the Giants lineup somewhere. He's kind of one of those guys who can basically hit anywhere in a lineup. He could hit first, he could hit fourth, he could hit seventh, eighth. So he's a versatile kind of lineup presence, I would say, and he's gonna hit you 20 plus home runs probably. and he'll just contribute to another Giants team that's probably going to hit a lot of homers, even though they don't really have the big name recognition. So I understand in the shadow of Freddie Freeman how this can come across as disappointing, but when all is said and done, Joc Pederson is probably going to help the Giants win some games, and he's just going to fit in just like everybody else, similar to how they kind of did it last year. And something that comes to mind, and I know obviously it's better to have Freddie Freeman than not. I'm not saying that it's not, but when the Dodgers got Betts, it was the same kind of sentiment around here. Like, why don't the Giants make moves like this? They're never going to be able to compete with this Dodgers team that's making the big moves. Well, guess what? They won the division last year versus a Dodgers team that had all that star talent, that got Scherzer and Trey Turner at the deadline. So they've done it before. Baseball is kind of an unpredictable game, and there's still time left in the offseason. Farhan Zaidi has specifically said that the most overrated roster in the entire baseball season is the opening day roster, meaning we all spend so much time and energy focused on the opening day roster. But if you follow the Giants closely, you know that the roster is a evolving thing throughout the course of an entire year, and it's not stagnant at all. And so we spend a lot of time focusing on the opening day roster. Last year, the Giants add Chris Bryant at the deadline. The Dodgers add Trey Turner and Max Scherzer. So even if they go into the season and these are the main moves that they make and they don't make any other major additions prior to opening day, there's still time. I mean, a whole season goes by. Young players can step up and become good players for you. Mike Yastrzemski, Lamont Wade Jr., these were not kind of opening day parts of the Giants lineup last year, but they became parts of that roster moving forward. And then, of course, there's a trade deadline when you can continue to add talent, assuming you're in contention, which I would expect the Giants to be, especially with expanded playoffs. But the odds of winning the division are against them. There's no doubt about that. I would have said that before the Dodgers picked up Freddie Freeman. Just because the Giants won 107 games last year doesn't mean they're going to win 107 games again. Although I would be surprised if this is a team that is not above 500. And obviously they should be aiming for more than that, and they should be trying to win the division. But on paper, that Dodgers team is so talented that it's going to be hard to match them on paper just by making one or two moves. You would basically have to have a lot of things go your way in order to match that team on paper. And now it got even tougher. So anyway, coming up next, we'll look a little bit deeper at the players that the Giants acquired. I also want to talk about the schedule. We heard about because the first two series of the year were written off the schedule. The Giants are just starting as if the first two series didn't happen, but now we know how they're going to be made up, and it's tough for the Giants, and actually the Dodgers, again, beneficiaries of this. So we'll get into that in just a minute. But first, are you ready to discover your purpose and leave an impact wherever you go? Mission Possible, written and read by New York Times bestselling author and athlete Tim Tebow, encourages you to find your inspiration, pursue your purpose, and create a life for yourself that counts. Ignite a spark in your life through this new inspirational listen. Mission Possible by Tim Tebow is available wherever audiobooks are sold. All right, as promised, we are going to talk about Joc Pederson and Matthew Boyd a little bit more. I want to mention Donovan Solano and Alex Dickerson found new teams yesterday, so we'll talk about that for a minute. And then also the schedule has been updated to make up those 6 games that the Giants were supposed to play to start the year against the Padres and the Brewers. So we'll get into all of that, but thanks again for making Locked On Giants your first listen every day. Locked On MLB Prospects. Host Lindsey Crosby is a prospect encyclopedia, and he's going deep on the MLB stars of tomorrow. It's free and available wherever you get podcasts. So yeah, I just want to kind of finish up that conversation. Matthew Boyd, he had surgery on the flexor tendon, which is in, I think, the forearm. Left-handed pitcher has some intrigue, but he's not supposed to be back until June. And so it's just another kind of depth signing for the San Francisco Giants, and low risk 1-year deal. And if he's able to come back, this is the thing, that kind of on paper top 5 in the Giants rotation has some injury risk. And so just signing guys like Matthew Boyd, Carlos Martínez, Jakob Junis, and I would expect them to continue to make signings like this. Maybe Chris Archer, throwing him out there as a possibility. And then they've got Tyler Beede, they've got Sean Jelly, Sammy Long, Kervin Castro could potentially make starts, and others. So they're just building up that depth. And again, this is how they did it last year, and they had a lot of success with this formula. But also, a lot of guys stayed healthy for the most part. So Boyd is just another example of that, and the Giants have really spread their money around. I want to make that point, that they have spent a lot of money, relatively speaking, this offseason, and especially when you include Brandon Crawford and his midseason extension, because I know a lot of people don't kind of think about how bringing back Brandon Belt, bringing back Brandon Crawford is like spending money because they were already here, but they were set to reach free agency at the end of the year. Belt technically was a free agent, and he accepted the qualifying offer. Those guys count as spending money. They had to fill those spots somehow, and they chose to fill them by spending money on players they already had. So when all is said and done, the Giants have committed, not for 2021, but overall commitments, $156.4 million this offseason on free agent spending. And if you count Crawford, imagine he signed at the end of the year instead of in the middle of the year, which I think that's reasonable to do. Then they're at about $190 million, which would put them basically in the top 5 of spending this offseason. But so they've spread it around. They didn't, commit all that money to Freddie Freeman or Carlos Correa, who still hasn't signed, by the way. Trevor Story still hasn't signed. Nick Castellanos, Michael Conforto, Tommy Pham. These guys are still out there. But the Giants have completely spread their money around. That $156 million, the most any player has received on the Giants is Carlos Rodón's $44 million. And then there's Anthony DeSclafani at $36, Alex Wood at $25, Alex Cobb at $20, Brandon Belt at $18.4, Brandon Crawford got $32 million over 2 years. So they've spent some money, they've just spread it around, and that's probably the sensible thing to do. I would hope that they still have maybe a significant addition left in them, but we shall see. And trades remain a possibility as well. And yeah, I think we covered Joc Pederson pretty well. You're probably pretty familiar with him. He's 29 years old, and he grew up a Giants fan, by the way, from Palo Alto High School, went to Palo Alto High School, and yeah, he's a platoon guy through and through. He signed with the Cubs last offseason with the goal of being an everyday guy. He actually hit lefties decently last year, but he struggled more against righties. Single season platoon splits are not really worth getting too into, but I would imagine with the Giants, he's going to mostly play, if not exclusively play, against right-handed pitching. Of course, he'll see the occasional lefty, but it's probably going to be a pretty strict platoon, and I would expect him to DH and play corner outfield kind of in a revolving door through the DH position. Giants are probably going to use that with a number of different players throughout the year. Just want to mention that Alex Dickerson signs a 1-year deal with the Atlanta Braves yesterday. It's a $1 million deal that is not guaranteed. I was struck by the Cincinnati Reds, though, signing Donovan Solano. So, unfortunately, it's a Reds team that's kind of tearing down, so it's not necessarily going to be a great team for Solano to play on. But, interestingly, it's the only free agent signing the Reds have made all offseason, and it's Donovan Solano on a 1-year, $4.5 million deal. I think he did well for himself there. I thought he might have to accept a minor league deal, or at the very least a little bit less than $4.5 million, but he gets $4.5 million from the Cincinnati Reds, probably going to play pretty much every day. So it's a good opportunity for Donnie Barrels, and obviously that is life-changing money as well. $4.5 million in his last year of control. When the last season for the Giants, they were paying him, I think, $3.2 million. They went to an arbitration hearing, which he lost. But So he, over the last couple years is making close to $8 million. So good for him. Great Giant. Both of these guys were instrumental in kind of turning around the Giants in the last couple years. It's kind of amazing because it's not like they're signing huge contracts here, but they were key parts of turning around almost the mentality of the team, just having players who started to contribute to wins. And before they showed up, the Giants didn't have a lot of that. They had players who were contributing to losses. But Dickerson and Solano were a big part of turning around the direction of the team. So I tip my hat to them, and I wish them nothing but the best with their new teams. I didn't expect either of these guys to be back, so this is not surprising at all. Anyway, coming up next, I want to talk about that schedule thing. It's really crazy, and the Dodgers, you're going to want to hear how the Dodgers finish out the season. It's kind of nothing like you've ever heard before. So stay tuned for that. But first, this episode is brought to you by Rock Auto. With the ever-increasing number of makes and models, it's now impossible for your local chain auto parts store to stock all the parts you need. Why endure the often pointless or seemingly intimidating questioning? Is your Odyssey an LX or an EX? And wait while the person behind the counter slowly orders the parts on their computer, choosing the only brand their warehouse happens to carry. You have computers with access to rockauto.com at home and in your pocket. So why choose to spend 30, 50, 100% more for the same parts from a chain store or car dealership? Random example, Honda Odyssey fuel pump. You'll pay $353 from a chain store, just $216 from Rock Auto. It's the same part, and you can buy it from Rock Auto, bring it to your trusted dealership or whatever, and they'll install it for you, and you just save a bunch of money. It's a total no-brainer. Rock Auto is a family business serving do-it-yourselfers for 20 years. Go to rockauto.com right now and see all the parts available for your car or truck. Write Locked On in their How Did You Hear About Us box so they know that we sent you. Amazing selection, reliably low prices. All the parts your car will ever need. rockauto.com. All right, here we go. We are going to talk about the quirks of the schedule. Thankfully, with this new collective bargaining agreement somehow getting reached in time to save a 162-game season, I still kind of can't believe that they got through that. Seemed for a while like we might miss a significant number of games, and I wouldn't have been shocked if we were still negotiating here on March 17th. But instead, spring training games are underway today. Giants start playing spring games tomorrow, but some teams started today. So thankfully, we're getting a full schedule. And the way that the league is doing it, as I alluded to earlier, the first two series of the year just fall off the schedule. And so the season is starting on what would have been the third series of the year under the old schedule. So the Giants are starting at home against the Marlins. They normally start on the road. They were supposed to start on the road with 3 at San Diego and then 3 at Milwaukee. So those 6 games need to be made up. And the way that they're made up is unfavorable to the Giants. In their first road trip of the year, well, let me just say, they start with 3 at home against the Marlins and then 3 at home against the Padres. They're then off on the next day, and then they have what would have been a long road trip. 3 in Cleveland, 4 in New York to play the Mets, and then 3 in Washington, D.C. to play the Nationals. So as part of the quirk of this schedule, after that 10-game road trip to start the year, they fly to Milwaukee to play 1 game against the Brewers. They have a 1-game trip to Milwaukee at the end of a 10-game road trip. So it becomes an 11-game road trip, and then they come home and play the next day against the Oakland A's at home. Brutal. That's pretty brutal. And then they finally have an off day that after that 2-game series against the A's, and then things are back to normal for a while. By the way, another quirk of the schedule, they don't play the Dodgers until May 3rd and 4th in LA, 2-game series. They don't play the Dodgers at home until June. And by June, I mean mid-June, the 10th, 11th, and 12th. So that is weird. They don't see the Diamondbacks until the 4th of July, at home or on the road. Very unusual. So the Giants later end up making up the rest of those games. They play a doubleheader in Milwaukee. I'm trying to find the exact date. It's a random kind of doubleheader in Milwaukee. I actually can't even find it as I scroll through the schedule. I had it. Oh, there it is. Ooh, that's brutal. So it is in September. It is part of a road trip. They were supposed to have an off day between 3 games at LA to play the Dodgers, and then it was supposed to be an off day, and then 3 at Chicago playing the Cubs. But now I guess it makes sense given that they'll be in the Chicago area. But instead of having an off day, they have a double header against the Brewers, and then they go to Chicago. At least Chicago is near Milwaukee, but at the end of the year, rosters will be expanded, so I guess that helps for that. And then double headers usually get an extra roster player on your roster anyway. But still, would have preferred to have made those games up to start the year, or would have preferred to just start the season on time. But anyway, the Giants were supposed to end the season with a 6-game homestand, 3 against the Rockies and 3 against the Diamondbacks. And that would have been quite favorable to end the year. But now that those Padres games get made up in San Diego at the very end of the schedule. So it kind of messes with things. It is not a favorable change for the Giants. And for the Dodgers, I've been promising to talk about this. The quirk of the schedule, they were supposed to play the Rockies at home at some point in the first couple series of the year. So now that series against the Rockies gets moved to the end of the year for them, and they're already playing the Rockies at home to end the year. They were supposed to. So what's happening is they get 6 games at home against the Rockies to end the season. That's brutal from, the Giants' perspective. They may very well go out and win all 6. The Dodgers pretty much won out to end the year anyway last year, and now you're putting them against a very weak opponent in the Colorado Rockies, who's almost certainly going to be out of contention, Chris Bryant or not, at the end of the year in LA, 6 games. So you better, if you want to have any chance of winning the division, which already the odds are against them, you better have a sizable lead, at the end of the year there. So that's just the reality of the quirks of the new schedule, but I just thought it was worth pointing out that is what's going to happen. So that is all the time we have for today. Coming up tomorrow, we're going to do a mailbag. If there's any other Giants news that happens between now and then, we'll talk about that as well. So look out on Twitter for the prompt, and feel free to ask me a question, and I will possibly answer it on tomorrow's show. So once again, my name is Ben Kaspick. Check me out on Twitter at Ben Kaspick, Kaspick. If you like this show, please consider rating it, leaving a review, liking, commenting, subscribing on YouTube, all of that good stuff. So thank you in advance, and thank you to everyone who's done so already. I can't wait to be with you again tomorrow. Thanks again for listening. Stay locked on Giants.